Get some insight about the issue of race and lethal force by police. Lance LoRusso joins us from Atlanta. He's an attorney and a former law enforcement officer. He also wrote the book When Cops Kill. Lance, what do you think when you look at this video?
You know, the video is very, very concerning. And the thing that I really want to know, I think the thing a lot of people want to know, this shooting happened on Saturday. So the question is, what did this officer tell investigators immediately after the shooting that was contradicted by the video, the specifics that was contradicted that led them to charge him right away? It doesn't surprise me that they charged him right away, but I really would love to know exactly what he told them.
Lance, as a former law enforcement officer, I mean, it's kind of surprising to see a chief come out and say, I was sickened by what he saw. Pretty damning, isn't it?
The tape is very problematic, you know, and like I said, the chief has come out very quickly. They've been very transparent. They charged him right away. And I think that speaks to the fact that they are taking this very seriously. And as soon as the video came up, they immediately took action. I think that one thing that's not getting a lot of airplay that's important is this shooting just happened 4 days ago. And typically, as a part of a homicide investigation, they would be knocking on doors and they would be trying to find anybody who had a vantage point. So I'm glad this young man came forward, and I think that they probably would have found other witnesses, and there may be other witnesses in the course of their investigation. But there's a lot of other evidence on the scene that probably would have contradicted what we heard on that radio transmission.
Is cell phone video becoming the great equalizer in these cases? I mean, back when you were a law enforcement officer, it wasn't out there, right?
It wasn't out there, but you know, we always have told law enforcement officers in investigations, teaching the academy and criminal investigators, there's always a witness. Now, that witness now has cell phone video, but it's one of the concerns that we have that we've got to get that video for all parties to see. It really makes me wonder. I've wondered from the start of the Michael Brown shooting as to why there was not video of the entire encounter. It was a nice day. It was a residential area. It's very hard to believe that somebody did not have a cell phone out to take video.
You've been in law enforcement. You've been an attorney. You bring up the Michael Brown case. There have been a lot of cases that have resonated here in the United States where the question of racial bias and inequality have come forward. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think that we have to look at officers as individuals, and we have to look at the people who are interacting with law enforcement as individuals. The thing that gets lost in this is law enforcement officers make about 11 million arrests a year. So when we start looking at the interactions between officers and citizens, those arrests only represent a very small portion of those interactions. So we have a great deal of interactions that go just fine, that there is no problem, that there is no issue beyond what we would expect. So, you know, when we start focusing on one situation like this and try to extrapolate it to some larger issue, it becomes very, very concerning. And sometimes it doesn't take into account the race of the officers. Law enforcement officers in the United States are not all white. So we have a lot of African American, Asian, and Hispanic officers that are interacting with the public. I think we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about whether or not it's a race issue.
I was reading some of the testimonials about your book, When Cops Kill. A lot of law enforcement people have read it, have give you very high marks. What do you think should be the takeaway from your book from a layman watching this broadcast?
Sure. I wrote When Cops Kill, and by the way, I'm donating all the money to law enforcement charities. This really was an effort to educate the public. When there's an officer-involved shooting involving a death, there's an administrative investigation into the officer's training and their equipment. There's a criminal investigation, a regular homicide investigation. That leads to a prosecutorial inquiry. That leads to a grand jury inquiry. And now we see that the federal government can get involved through the Department of Justice. Two things I want them to take away. One, there is a process, and two, that process takes time. A lot of times people want answers very quickly, and in the blur of the news cycle trying to get information out, a lot of times people don't have all the facts. Letting people know that it is going to take a while for those investigations to be done, and have faith in the process that it will come to a resolution and a set of facts that we can all rely on.
Lance LoRusso joining us from Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.